Okay, I think we're live. Okay, I think we're live. Uncle Dexter from 1632 Real Talk on a Tuesday afternoon. Uncle Dexter talks about a subject matter called anger, and this anger has it's like a tree. It has a lot of different parts to go to it. And I talk about anger through the lenses of my own life and what I believe that how having anger has ran havoc in my own personal life. And so you have to follow me because this is old radio style theater of the mind. So I tell a story when I'm talking about these various different parts of this tree: anger, rage, resentment, bitterness, vitriol, envy, jealousy, judgment, and the two imposters, ego and pride. A story has to be associated with it, but you have to create it in story form in order for most millennials and Gen Z and X's to get it. I used to come right at anger and leave, and people say, "Well, I heard it, but I didn't hear it because it didn't have an opportunity to um, sink down because people were so busy listening what the intentions are reacting to it." That's what it boiled down to. Anyway, um, I came up with a system some 40 years ago, 1983, when I got out of prison, and it was going from bitter to better, better to responsible, responsible to accountable, or whatever you want to do. Uh, bitter to better, better to responsible, responsible to accountable, accountable to the struggle, from the struggle of dealing with the first three or four different things. You're going to get rejection like Uncle Dexter because it requires for you to distance yourself like it did for me to folks. And from that rejection, um, when I was left by myself, I just became motivated to take care of me. Had no idea how I was going to do it, but I was motivated. And so that's how I got here on this subject. I've been playing with this subject for well over 20 years. Uh, I think in our current society, especially with the millennials, anger is a poison. Resentment is a poison. So anyway, I want to continue on with this thing about capacity. So I'm going to talk like I'm talking to my best buddy, or this is theater of the mind, because I used to believe um, when I was younger, early in the marriage, early in the relationship, that I had the capacity to hold, to do anything, you know, because I had head knowledge. That's what I believed constituted me having capacity. But I'm talking about capacity in relationship to this human part of life, man-woman relationship. On social media, there's such a debate about. There's really nothing, but it's important to the young folk who talk about it. Love and relationships and 50-50, and while all the time everybody's still angry and bitter and cutting each other's neck off. So let me just talk to you for a moment. Not going to be long, but I used to think that I was a solid dude. You know, could read and could comprehend intellectually and could mingle, right? Um, thought I had things going on, you know, bills paid, responsibilities. I, di- I didn't know at that time, but the little bills and whatever I had was handled. Um, as I got later on in life and I got married and starting to have kids, I still believe that having an apartment, having kids, and being able to function in a relationship was so important. And I believe that because I come from the hood, and that's what I was taught. 1632 real talk. What was taught that learn how to function. You know, I believed that if the lights were on and the kids were straight, I was doing my job. If there was food in the refrigerator. Uh, they never addressed the static that may have been in the room between me and my wife. You follow me? But here's what I didn't see. Function is not the same thing as being whole. Not, for, especially for Uncle Dexter. I could keep things running, but that's about all I could do. I didn't have any depth. I couldn't go deep. And let me be honest with you. Nobody taught me anything about this same capacity, although I had a brother and uncles and cousins who were a lot older than I was. Nobody pulled me aside and said, Dexter, this is how you hold your anger. Nobody showed me how to repair uh, the hurt as a result of the anger after the fight, after fallout. So I kind of got built up from fragments, from little pieces that go put back together. I reacted, I observed, and I learned from my own mistakes. And I'd be a fool to tell you that, I didn't have male friends around me. Uh, oh, they supported me, but they supported the blind spot. They supported the bullshit inside of me. That's the blind spot. And so if I downplayed something, they they downplayed it too. So if the conversation got very heated at home about money or about the way I was disciplining the children, um, they supported. They may have had an opinion, but they wouldn't come in and help correct me on that opinion. See what the capacity is. Um, if I justified something, they justified it with me, but they were supposed to be my friends. All I was told by other men or men in that circle was go home and smooth it out. Go buy her some flowers or go take her to dinner. Always throw money at it. Nobody said go back and examine Dexter. All the friends that I thought I had, nobody said go back and examine you. That is, it's a you problem. I said this before, just like Uncle Dexter. I don't think most men are broken. Just like Uncle Dexter, most men, like myself, was wounded. There's definitely a difference in being broken and being wounded. Broken can't function. Wounded keeps moving. When I was wounded, I kept moving. I hopped. I skipped. I did whatever I needed to do to stay functional. And it's in relationship to this subject, it is function over feelings with respect to capacity. Um, I'm getting off the script, but I believed in being performative. I believed in being in control. So the sum total of me was functional, wounded, and not wanting to examine myself. So life's lessons corrected me in and out of jail, reformatory schools. That's what life does to you when you don't want to listen to your parents, your grandmama, your mama. You get out in the streets, get out in the world, and the world corrects you. Same lesson, different lesson. Um, I finally had to stop asking, why does this keep happening to me? Why am I keep falling on my face? I didn't have the capacity. Didn't know what capacity looked like growing up in life. Didn't know that as I got into a marriage and had children, that there were things that were going to be unpleasant that I needed to be able to set and take from my wife, from my friends, from the people who purport to be my friends. And what I'm coming to realize, or what I did come to realize, is capacity is being able to hear something uncomfortable and not react right away. Well, I struck out because I always believed in reacting. As the words were coming out of your mouth, I was listening, but I was prepared to give a response. And so, because there was not a pattern to follow behind, no excuse. Um, Nowadays, capacity to me looks like, you're right, I handled that wrong. So if there's a disagreement, if that disagreement at home gets spirited, I can process information and then tell the other person, you're right. I handled whatever I did wrong. That's going back to apologize. Capacity is holding tension without throwing it back. That means not throwing the stuff that she threw in my face back at her because I felt small as a man. I believe the capacity looks like in 2026 providing and repairing all types of relationships that we encounter. And as I continue to read and continue to examine me as a man, I ran across a book that I talk about all the time, the Four Agreements. Um, when I bring them up to the few friends, they just laugh, and I think one of them said, "Oh, that's that white man stuff," or something to that effect. But there was four simple principles that the more I got into it, because I was already examining me, and I wanted to be able to have the capacity to go deep inside of me. To want to know why I function. I want to know why I do the things I do, say the things I do. So the number one principle is being impeccable. Oh, what is that word? We didn't use that word in the projects. It basically means keep your words clean coming out of your mouth. Well, when I went and got the dictionary and broke that thing down, oh my God! So I said it was feelings involved. So I was always responding to feelings coming out of my mouth, coming out of my mouth. I had to learn how to stop taking things personal. Part of building the capacity up. I had to examine this thing about assumptions based on my expectation of whatever that situation was, which was, as I'm getting older now, I realize that thing called expectation is a setup. And it's a setup to anger, because what if they fail you? You follow me? And then the last one that is so important is always doing your best. So if I'm if what's coming out of my mouth is good, that's nourishing to my mate, to my children, to people in my circle, then I ought not to be taking things personal. I ought not to be assuming things from those folks because their body language change. You see how this thing goes? And always doing my best didn't look like performing because not having the model to fall behind, everything was performance driven. But doing your best, I think, has to do with also internally processing information, being able to have it come up, and when it comes out of your mouth, it comes out impeccable. That's when I start stop smoothing things over and trying to fix them. I just went on down to the root and started to build back up. Now, am I all the way there? Nope. But thank God I'm not where I used to be with respect to this subject matter. For instance, if you got 5 kids, you got pressure. Your wife ain't growing the same pace you are. You the breadwinner, just like Uncle Dexter was. You bringing the money in, you working, and somehow or another we had the need to try to fix the other person in the relationship. Well, I'm learning now because when one man increases his capacity, the temperature in the house changes. Oh, so when Uncle Dexter learned how to deal with the capacity of whatever was going on in the home, the temperature changed. The kids were on edge. The wife would reframe her words. I wasn't so needy to change my thought pattern to cut down anything that was coming at me. I hope I'm making sense. And then, slowly but surely, quietly, things escalated less and less and less. I start to assume, not that and I still assume, but I start to assume less and less and less. But I was fast to repair, and I'm still fast to repair a wound if, in fact, I'm responsible for that. Well, so I say that to say in relationship to capacity, that showed up in my home as looking like leadership. I'm not saying this as a perfect man. I'm saying this as a man who fell on his face, got up, fell again, and finally got tired of tripping over the same thing, expecting a different outcome. But I wasn't broken. That's what I mean about being wounded. Every time I fell down, I got a big scar on the leg. But if I tended to the open wound, it would heal. Just a metaphor. Um, Part of having capacity is being able to deal or to give that wound your undivided attention. Um, this is a conversation that uncles need to have with their nephews, and fathers need to have with their sons, and men need to have at healing circles, and men need to have at. That's what I believe. Not all. That's what I believe. Need to have it the same conversation at men's fellowship, because again, I'm talking about capacity, and as we grow up and form our socialization skills to be able to intermingle with other men, other humans, there's a trust factor. We as men don't trust other men, especially with whatever little business we think we have. And so we put a lot of stock in that business. We put a lot of stock in that business because we don't want them to know just how messed up we are. But little do we know that the anger, the rage, the resentment will force it to the table to be exposed. You don't have to do it. freely and willingly, you're going to do it. You follow what I'm talking about? I'm just pushing a little with how serious this thing is with respect to building capacity. It ain't something you learn overnight. It's it's watching other men, watching other couples, watch folks who you look up to make mistakes, watching how they handle them, how they walk away from them, how they deal with their children in the midst of it. That's the capacity that I'm longing to get, where it goes deep, where I could have grace and understand that people are human, and so I don't have to look at the behavior. If I'm, I'm looking at the goodness in folk, and so that's why I'm on this subject matter. It's there is a real debate about men bringing home the money, women being able to work 50-50 relationships, and no, again, nobody really wants to ask the question in the midst of this debate. And they don't want to ask the question in the midst of the debate because what they're doing is they have no capacity, so it's showing up as compensation. And the compensation shows up as anger, rage, resentment, bitterness, and vitriol. Vitriol at that thing which you hate. That vitriol is associated to a feeling. It ain't a fact, it's a feeling. That's what's generating it. That hate, that anger, that's a feeling. Yes, I may have messed the money up 4, 5, 6 times in 1 month, and you got upset. That upsetness from you is a feeling. What's a fact is I messed up that money. But from that feeling, most men, just like Uncle Dexter, we react to the feeling that's coming from you. And so the anger rises to a point to where we can't see, because we don't have the capacity, 9 times out of 10, what Becky or Susie or Shanique is trying to say in the midst of this debate, in the midst of this conversation about messing money up. It's been my experience that generally it's her tone, her words that cut, to make us feel small, and it starts to show up in our little. Well, we start making assumptions in our little pea brains that they don't love us nor. Again, assumptions. And so we start doing this dance, which is called manipulation. And this stuff is getting worse and worse and worse because it's starting to show up in young folk in high schools, starting to show up in girls. My subject matter is capacity. You can think that you have the capacity, Pookie and Ray Ray, Billy and Johnny, but you need to take a good look at yourself. You need to go inside to see truly whether or not you have the capacity to deal with, to sit with the pain and suffering that you may have caused in your own home, amongst your own wife and children. The pain and suffering that you've caused in your own mind, in your own body, as a result of not having the capacity to deal with the stress load. I believe and I know for a fact, but you got to, the body keeps count. of the anger, rage, resentment, bitterness, and betrayal. It keeps count. And it shows up in a whole bunch of different ways inside the body, in the mind. So I just thought I'd stop by and share about this subject in a storytelling fashion about capacity. Um, Everybody's on the subject matter of the 50-50, and he can't hold his end and she can't hold his end, but we got children trapped in the middle. But because we haven't done the work on either side, who gets the blunt of it? Do we? And Uncle Dex used to be that. Did I have the capacity to be able to show compassion in the midst of this debate in a manner that doesn't affect my children? Nope. Because I had the need to be validated by my wife, but that's why I needed to be able to create an argument or fuss, form of manipulation. Yeah, but to flip the script so I'm validated. I don't even know how I got there. So I don't really want to make the subject matter complicated. It's the work has to be done. The work inside of men all over, even in Sacramento, the work must be done. There are no free lunches. And so we as men who lack the capacity, I would be encouraged that we would take a look at ourselves and stop blaming women, especially black women, brown women, white. Stop blaming for our downfalls, for our problems that we create. And the best thing we can come up with, but for her doing this. You follow me? And so if we don't want to establish relationships with other men to help hold us accountable, then we certainly have to stop assigning blame for where the pain comes from. I hope one person is getting something out of this. The subject matter is capacity. And, I played with this thing for almost a week. How I want to say it. And it wasn't until 15 minutes before the podcast that I throw that out the window. Because we're living in a time where the information is so freely available that it's so fluid. It's changing all the time in terms of how the outlook on the word capacity looks, how the outlook on what capacity looks like in 2026 in relationship to the project in Washington, D.C., in relationship to the apartments here in Sacramento, and what goes on in those two homes. He said, well, that's because what happens generally, that's probably a niece or nephew going through something who calls you. You follow me? And so here you are, just like Uncle Dexter, just listening and trying to discern, which I'm discovering now or have discovered, that I need to listen for capacity. I need not listen to be able to make a judgment. For my brothers and sisters who are unhoused and who are locked up in the penitentiaries and these drug rehabs, we have to take a personal inventory of your own life, right where you are. And is it possible in those circumstances as a man and woman who are unhoused or are locked up or in a rehab to gain the tools? Sure is. A lot of work. And this is, do we as people, do we as marginalized folks have the capacity to do the work? To set and hear from somebody else that we're rotten, that we're no good because of all the things we've done. That's what I'm talking about. Without getting offended by it. As I said, part of the 4 agreements was keep the words impeccable. Don't take things personal. Don't make assumptions, and always doing your best. So, do we have the capacity, Bobby, Anthony, Johnny, Billy, to take the heat from Susie, from Shanika, from Lucille in the midst of this thing without going buck wild, without crashing out, without feeling like we're this big, without feeling like we need to prove that we're right, and that right looks like just validation from the mother, from the woman, from the girlfriend. You follow what I'm talking about? I know it's all mumbo jumbo, but I was going somewhere with it. So I'm just, tell the brothers, wherever you may find yourself, you can start doing the work. If you find yourself in the unhoused community, you got to start forming your healing circles. Each one teach one. If you're in the county jail or in these penitentiaries, you got to start. You got to look up, how do I form a healing circle? Most people don't have money to go to counselors and psychiatrists. So then you have to have the capacity to bring about those things in your own respective communities, wherever you may be. Quit waiting on the white man or this guy or this guy. No, you create it. And 9 times out of 10, if you're in these confined conditions, you're not going to get people to open up readily. So it's going to be, it's repetitious. You just got to keep showing up. And you can only talk about the surface stuff for so long before you start cutting away at somebody and say, man, I've been thinking about this. I don't even have, I don't have the capacity to sit here and expose myself. We're dealing in an information age, especially with men, that healing groups ought to be like liquor stores all over America. And it's not exclusive to just black folks. It's exclusive to just men. Women have their own issues, but I'm talking about men. So just like those brothers and sisters who go to AA, you see how vigorously they go to that meeting? Well, you have to create that environment for men to want. They think about it when they first get up in the morning at 5 o'clock, knowing that 6 to 7 or 6 to 8 they have to have a meeting. That means a healing group where they get a chance to share. They get a chance to get some tools in their toolbox. Absent that, you'll never get the capacity, because the anger, the rage, the resentment will not allow you to ever ascertain the ability to get the tools. That's really what it boils down to. So Unc's been talking 33 minutes. Be good to yourself. For all my unhoused folks, people in the penitentiary, and you got to learn to be good to yourself right where you are. Well, what are you talking about? I got 5 years, and you got 5 years, and what? So what do? You beat yourself up over the head because you got 5 years? That's really a you problem, because I've been there. But that doesn't mean you got to live in hell for 5 years. That hell is right here in your head, in your mind. You follow me? And so when you find yourself in spots where you're confined, that's the place to do the work. That's the place to dry out. That's the place to make some atonement for the messed up decisions that you've made in your own life. Because all of that's just temporary. You're going to come home at some point. You're going to be reacclimated with your family members and your loved ones and those folks in your proximity. So again, thank you so very much for allowing me just to come and share. I'm probably going to tear this subject up a couple more times because it's so needed. And then when I get done cutting it up that way, I'm probably going to cut it up another way. If you don't ascertain the tools to deal with, or the ability to get capacity, to get at a level, I'm going to talk about the fact where you're going to find yourself. I ain't no doctor, no lawyer, no psychiatrist, none of that. I'm talking about common sense stuff. If men don't learn to manage their lives, somebody else will manage it for them. You can talk all out of both sides of your neck if you want to. If you don't learn to play by the rules, the square box that you didn't make, and function within that thing that's acceptable in a civilized society, you're in trouble. You are in trouble. And therefore, if you're in trouble and you get pulled out of the home, that leaves your wife and children butt naked by themselves to have to defend. That's a you problem. See? Now, that's what I'm talking about, capacity to own that. Can we as men sit around and own that Jesus Christ, I went out and I robbed that store and I wasn't thinking about my wife, I wasn't thinking about my kids, but we were performative when we get on the phone. Oh baby, I love you. You talk to the kids, it's all about love, but it's all performative. You see what the difference is? So that's kind of the way I kind of want to play with this thing and go in the next couple of weeks. It's expensive to dig deep down inside of yourself. It's expensive to look at yourself and realize that you're nothing but you're nobody. You ain't a bag of chips, and you ain't all of what everybody say you are. And then be able to sit there with that and be fine with that. That's what's important with the capacity part of it. Can you accept it and then sit there and know, look, you know what? I'm just a nobody compared to everybody else who got it going on. They got this going on and they got that going on. They're doing this, they're doing that. You follow what I'm saying? And so I said we're looking at a pattern. And so if you look at the pattern from grandpa and your uncles and cousins who are doing great, that's a pattern. So as we get the tools in the toolbox, ask somebody, those that are out there for you to be able to start working it. You never get to the point where you have the capacity. So thank you so very much for allowing me to come in and share. I don't know if I don't know if I'm gonna do a pop up tomorrow or not, but stay encouraged and always remember, be good to yourself. I don't care where you are. You can't find no answers looking at the bottom of the ground. And so if you are in jail and you walk around that yard, all you're looking at is dirt. Can't no dirt give you answers. The same in that county jail. You're looking at the wall. You're looking at concrete. Thank you so very much. See you later.